We have made it to the conclusion of the regular season here in the St. Louis Dragons franchise here on Madden 24. As today, we've got Week 18 here in season number 6, our final tune-up before we get back into the playoffs. With this being the end of the regular season, that means we've got our studs and duds of the year. Of course, the Google form link is in the description for voting, and we'll go over the candidates at the end of the episode. Our final opponent here on the schedule is the San Francisco 49ers, one of our division rivals. As it stands now, we're 11-5. With a win, we clinched the 2 seed in the NFC. We're going to be either second or third. That's the lowest we can be if we lose and Green Bay wins. So we have fate in our own hands here to get the 2 spot. Before we get into this game against the 49ers, though, we do have a prospect profile. Last time around, we went over the offensive players, and today we'll be going over the defensive prospects in this year's draft class. I think it's pretty fair to say the defensive side of the ball for us has been a lot more inconsistent and up and down than the offense. If one side of the ball loses as a playoff game this year, I would predict it would be the defense, and it doesn't help that our best defensive player, Simeon Bonnet, will be out until the NFC Championship if we get that far. Bonnet has already missed some time throughout the year, and during the games that he did miss, our defense took a noticeable fall. Against the Falcons, Jets, and Dolphins, we allowed 31 points exactly. And then last week, the defense was a lot better until Simeon Bonnet got injured, and that's finally when Seattle was able to get some drives together. Kenneth Walker had 23 rushing yards. He's one of the best backs in the league. Tyler Nguyen put up pretty good stats, but he really wasn't all that effective until Bonnet's injury. We need more consistency from the other guys on the defense, especially when Simeon Bonnet is not on the field, which is going to be the case for us today and going into the playoffs. Well, luckily, there's a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball in this year's draft class, and I'm excited to go over these prospects because I think a few of these guys very well could make impacts for us as soon as next season, given that some of our better defensive players are not under contract for this upcoming year. We'll start with the defensive line, and we have really tried to find our Robin to Simeon Bonnet's Batman, and we haven't been able to. DJ Orleans, we hoped would be that, but he's been very inconsistent this year. Malachi Weston and Trajan Blyshenden have been impressive, but they are both free agents. Zion Creed we drafted in the first round last year. We're hoping for a step up from him. And then Bubba Watkins, Finnegan Howell-Coleman, Devontae Wyatt, and Orlin Babylon are all also free agents. So most of our defensive linemen are not under contract next year other than Bonnet, Creed, Nnamdi Sanaga, and some of the young guys. So in other words, we're probably not going to be able to afford a lot of those guys, and we're going to probably need to use some draft capital on the big fellas. And we'll start inside at defensive tackle. Aradion Edit from Stanford, I think, is a name to watch. I really like what he provides as a run defender, and I think there's a lot of upside with him as a pass rusher because I think he's a really impressive athlete at his size. He's a little bit raw compared to some of the other first-round players here, but I think he's got a really high ceiling. Cesar Gutierrez from Baylor, I think, is a little bit more polished. 6'6", 311. He's a little bit bigger. I think he's a lot more scheme versatile. And then looking down the board, guys like Marion Page, Johan Stevenson, both could be first-rounders. Some day 3 names to watch include Oda Rafa, Demario Sullivan, and Daxton Klimpman-Wolf. Overall, not a very deep group, though, inside, which is unfortunate for us. Let's look at the edge rushers at right end and left end, where there is a lot of high-end talent, including 2 projected top 3 picks. We'll start with Varad Omafodable from Clemson, who I think is probably going to go in the top 15, 6'4", 272, good size, length, and explosiveness coming off the edge. He's kind of a one-trick pony. He really relies on power, but he really knows how to use his strength. It's just a matter of using finesse against some of those more athletic tackles. And then Ulysses Hammond from Minnesota is the complete opposite type of player. Another good athlete. He's also got good explosiveness, but he only wins with finesse. He's got great quickness, but he doesn't really know how to convert speed to power. Aston Jenkins from LSU, I would argue, is a little bit more well-rounded. He maybe doesn't have the pass rush upside that those top 2 guys have, but I think he's a little bit more consistent, and he's by far the best run defender of the group. Yuri Waldemar and Xavion Creed, that Zion's younger brother, could be names to watch on day 2. And then in terms of depth, I like Vinny Klippel quite a bit. Legend Robinson as well, I think could be pretty good. At right end, this is where we find the big boys. Malik Moses and Kentrell Poster are both currently projected to go in the top 3. And if I was you guys, I would pay extra attention here, considering, as of now, the top 3 picks in this draft will all belong to teams in our division. So chances are one or both of these guys will be in the NFC West. That starts with Malik Moses, who many scouts believe might be the best prospect overall in this entire draft class. 6'8", 315, really impressive size, great run defender, great finesse rusher, great power rusher. He checks off all the boxes. I think he's got a little bit more upside than Poster. I think he's a little bit more athletic. But I think Poster's a little bit more ready to go right now. He's a little bit more consistent as a tackler. He's a better power rusher, in my opinion, despite being smaller. I think it's more likely he were to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, per se, but I think it's also more likely Malik Moses turns into some superstar. Regardless, I'm worried about the thought of having one or both in our division. Choi Young Hwan from Middle Tennessee State is a good consolation prize for the teams who miss out on those two. Really good power rusher, inconsistent against the run, though. Alberto Del Toro and Bowie Foa Tanoa are 2 other names to watch. I think both of those guys probably go into second as we move over to linebacker. Our team has never really used a high pick on a linebacker, with the exception of Ryan Nada, who was drafted as a safety and then moved over. Obviously, Ryan Nada and Owen Popo are both going to be sticking around for quite some time. Both of them have a lot left on their contracts, and they're both really good. But we could use some more depth. Jabril Fofana's on the final year of his deal. Penultimo Barahoma is pretty solid, but if we don't bring back a guy like Fofana, we could use a replacement. This is a really good linebacker class from top to bottom, one of the stronger position groups in this class. We'll start at left outside linebacker, and there are a few edge rushers at the top, including Darpeace Emejoy, who is also projected to go into top 5. So another guy who very well could find himself in the NFC West. 6'5", 251, really impressive explosiveness. He reminds me of TJ Watt in the sense of he's a really good pass rusher, but he's also good against the run. He's also good in coverage, and I think this kid could end up being a superstar. Warwick Eldred Jr. from Texas A&M also probably goes into top 5 to 10 picks. 6'2", 243. He's a little bit undersized, but he still gets it done. He just needs to improve in the run game. And then we've got Dre Harris from Penn State, who's more of an off-ball linebacker. This is somebody who's not going to have his hand in the dirt. He's not going to line up right at the line of scrimmage, but I think he's a solid run defender, and he's really good in coverage. Orion Martins and Jarrett Shorts both look like pretty solid day 2 picks. And then Pulieti Samalu from Miami has a pretty fun skill set. He's a smaller guy, more of a box safety type, but I think for day 3, he's an intriguing player. As we move over to right outside, we've got another projected top 5 pick with Neville Ramsey of Ohio State. He started his collegiate career at the University of Oklahoma, where he played really well for the first 3 years. Possible number 1 pick candidate coming into this season. Transfers to Ohio State, gets hurt in spring ball, and decides to opt out for the season. So even though he's listed being from Ohio State, he's never played a game from there. Despite that, teams are going to look at his film over the last couple of years and see a stud. He is dynamite coming off the edge, but needs to refine his pass rush toolbox. Houdini Asimbola is a really versatile player who I think you can line up around the defense. 6'5", 273, mostly plays with his hand out of the dirt, but if, say, we drafted him, probably a trade-up candidate, he'd be more of a defensive end type. Rattler Chosen I like a lot on day 2, and then Fred Udoka from Washington State I think is the sleeper of this group. As we move inside, probably not a position we're going to look at early, but there are some good players here, including Killian Dinthed Chase from Oklahoma. He is super athletic, really good cover player, not great in the run really at all. I kind of view him as a big safety type, someone who you can move around the defense. Drago Rodrigo from Purdue's a fun player, also a really good cover guy. And I think there's some solid depth here as well of guys like DeChillis Winter, Tyrius Ripley, and Harold Larson. And then towards the back end of day 3 with Deku Etienne and Levisair Dobson. I like those guys quite a bit. As we move over to the secondary, which I think is probably the most interesting position group on our team, because I don't really know what to make of this group. We've got talent at corner, we've got talent at safety, but pretty much none of these guys are under contract for too much longer. Of course, Cam Lucifer has been a major wild card this year. He leads the NFL in interceptions, but he has been abysmal in coverage. He has 2 years left, along with Jeff Okuda and Demore Diggins, while Ronrakis Barber only has 1 year left. At safety, Samasoni Saluni also expiring, while Jalen Bourgeois only has 2 years left. So after next year, the only two defensive backs under contract are current rookies, Essie Fortis and DeMar Knight, who were both day 3 guys who haven't really played much in the NFL. So obviously they're both very unproven, and because of that, I think defensive back is going to be a huge need for our team, given the uncertainties in the short term, considering the struggles of guys like Cam Lucifer, and in the long term, with 75% of our secondary not being under contract in 2 years. The only surefire first-round corner for me is Abraham Carr out of LSU. He's only 20 years old. He's one of the youngest players in the class, but he's also one of the best. Really smart, instinctive player, especially in zone coverage, but he's good in man as well. He's physical. He's got good ball skills, and I like his measurables as well. There's really no questions to his game. All the other corners are fringe first-round guys, probably more of early second-rounders. That starts with Arnold Bailey from Texas Tech. Really good size, length, and quickness. At 6'2", around 215 pounds. Really good in man coverage, good ball skills as well. And then Osmond Carbonet is kind of more of a different type of skill set. He's 6'3", a little bit slimmer. Really good ball skills, but not as consistent in coverage as those top two guys, especially in zone. I love his physicality, though. He's great in the run game. He's tough. He's hard-nosed, old school. In terms of more second-round options, you've got Colshawn Mattydale, Ricky Palacios, and Eden Peoples Jr. Jay Harrison's intriguing because he's super small and skinny, but I think he's a really good player. And then guys like Justice Fulton, Shamir Springs, Idris Skinner, even on day 3. Some solid players. Britton Stockton as well. Let's move over to safety now. It's a position that we've really invested heavily in terms of draft capital over the last couple of years, but we still could use quite a few safeties. And we'll start here with Tazwell Hudson out of Georgia, the top projected safety in this class coming from Georgia. He stands at 6'1", 200 pounds. He's your prototypical center field type of safety. Look at this play. Makes a great play on the ball. Tips it down, and his teammate is able to come in with the interception. I think Hudson's skill set really would fit well for our defense if we were to pick him towards the end of the first round. And then we've got Beverly Archibald III out of BYU. 6 foot, 210 pounds. He's got an interesting skill set because I don't think he's quite as good in coverage, but I think he's better in the run game, and I think you can use him in different ways. Cameron Rojo, Kalen Hutchinson, and Dejon James headline some of the names here at free safety as we move over to strong safety. And I think Dakari Pickett from Michigan is going to be a guy who the Dragons really covet. Only 20 years old. Again, super young. He reminds me a lot of his former Michigan teammate Ryan Nada. He's not as big as Nada. He's only 6'3", 220 pounds. But for being as big as him, he's got a really intriguing skill set. He's a really good cover player, but he's also got great versatility. He can go in the box. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dragons pick a Michigan defensive player in the first round for a third consecutive season, being that Pickett is the type of skill set that this team has really liked over the past couple of years. If they miss out on him, Jack Popo from Florida is another taller safety, 6'4", 225. Probably going to end up in the third round, but I think he'd be a good backup plan. And with that, there's your draft class. I know we did things a little bit differently this year by doing all of it at the end of the season rather than spreading it out, but I've been pretty busy over the last couple of months. I figured it'd make more sense to kind of do this all at once rather than spread it out during this season. So with that, our full focus now lies with the St. Louis Dragons, and we'll get back to the draft class in the offseason after the playoffs, hopefully after we're hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. But again, with a win, we clinched the 2 seed in the NFC in what should be a very exciting playoff picture in both conferences. Only 2 teams have clinched in the AFC, but as it stands now, the AFC West could have all 4 teams make the playoffs, and the NFC kind of looks similar. Right now, all 4 NFC South teams are in, which going into the year didn't seem like a huge surprise. We knew the NFC South minus the Bucks were going to be really good, but sure enough, the Bucks ended up being really good themselves. Now, Atlanta's lost 5 in a row. They interestingly play New Orleans. The winner of that game is in for good. And of course, the Rams, Niners, and Seahawks are currently slated to pick in the top 3 because our division is unserious. So going into this game against the Niners, we know they're one of the worst teams of the league. We played them back in Week 6, and we slaughtered them 38-6. And the reason why we blew them out like they did was because we were coming off a really bad loss the prior week against the Rams. That game against the Rams we should have won, and we completely blew it. So because of that, we came in extra focused here, and we dominated. The Niners are interesting because they have much of the same core that they've had in the past, but their core has not aged gracefully. They still have Brock Purdy at quarterback, but with a broken toe, he will not play today. Instead, it'll be Colin Keaton Givian, the fifth-year man out of Houston. He was in the same quarterback draft class that Puma Whitlock was back in Season 1. He's a good athlete. He's got a really strong arm, and he's pretty accurate for the most part. He's got a pretty intriguing skill set and played quite well last week, albeit it was against the Rams, who are not very good. This is Dexter Sanders' backfield full-time, with Christian McCaffrey being traded at the deadline. George Kittle was also sent away at the trade deadline. So the Niners have begun shipping some of the older faces out here. I think Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are going to stick around given their contracts. But many of the older guys on this team I would expect are going to be gone in the offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if they look at quarterback early in this year's class to move on from Brock Purdy. One more order of business before we get started. We do have some guys who are chasing some milestones. Puma Whitlock is around 300 yards away and 3 touchdowns from completing a 5,000-yard, 40-touchdown season, and he's currently second for the MVP. So if he does hit those marks, maybe he'll pass Lamar. Our top receiver, Arturo Modelo, is also chasing milestones. He currently holds the receiving triple crown. He leads in receptions by about 30. No one's going to touch him there. In terms of yards, he is up by a little bit under 100 on CeeDee Lamb, and then he's tied for the lead in touchdowns with Jamar Chase. He's getting close to some all-time numbers, though. He's not all that close in terms of yards. He's around 500 away from Calvin Johnson, and he likely won't find his name on that list. But he only needs one receiving touchdown to be at 17, which would put him top 10 all-time. And he's already top 10 all-time in receptions with 126. If he gets at least 11 receptions today, he would put himself in 4th, which is probably the realistic goal. I don't think he's sniffing the top 3. Had he not missed week 2 against Carolina, though, this could be a different story, and he could be looking at breaking the all-time single-season receptions record. And the unfortunate thing is that's the only regular season game he's missed in his career. While we're on the subject for injuries, being that we are this close to the playoffs, we've got to make sure these guys stay healthy. Puma Whitlock has missed the playoffs 2 years in a row, essentially, and we're already going to be without Simeon Bonnet until the NFC Championship. Knock on wood, we get there. So even though we've got some guys in the running for some awards and some milestones, we're going to be smart about how we manage this game. Since we're still chasing the number 2 seed, all of our starters will play today, but we're going to be cautious. If anybody gets banged up, you are not coming back in the game. You are waiting until the playoffs. Along with that, depending on how this game goes, if the deficit is large either way, we're going to take a lot of the starters out early. The last thing we need is for injuries to derail another playoff run, because that's been the case 2 years in a row with not just Puma Whitlock, but guys like Arturo Modelo and Simeon Bonnet have both missed playoff games over the last couple of seasons. The only other player in the running for a major award is Cam Lucifer, who's currently first for best defensive back, which is ironic because for those of you who have actually watched the games, you know that Cam Lucifer has not been good this year whatsoever. So much so that we are making a pretty big switch with him. He is moving to the slot. I don't trust him in the outside right now, so he'll be splitting slot duties with Demore Diggins, while Ronrakis Barber will be taking over on the outside. This is a little bit of a gamble, but we've had Barber developing over the last couple of years. He has superstar development, and I think he's a really talented player who this year in particular has actually shown a lot of flashes when he's gotten on the field. With both Barber and Lucifer needing some reps at their new spots, both of them will play the entire game, regardless if the deficit is large or not. The only way one of them will come out is in case of injury, obviously. But if this game does become a blowout or out of reach, then obviously we're going to take guys like Puma and Modelo out. But players like those two are definitely going to stay the entire game because I want to see them get a full 40 minutes of action. And with that, we get set for the final regular season game here in Season 6 of the St. Louis Dragons franchise with our division rivals, the San Francisco 49ers, coming to town. Of course, the Niners are the only team who Puma Whitlock has beaten in a playoff game. That was all the way back in Season 3. I don't think the Niners have beat us since then. We have had their number, and we're hoping that's the case once again. Of course, with a win, the Dragons clinch the number 2 seed for good, which guarantees 2 home playoff games. Knock on wood, they win the first one. So here comes Puma Whitlock, who's had a career year, 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns, just 7 interceptions. Currently in second place for the MVP, looking to take that first spot away from Lamar Jackson. 2nd and 5, Puma on the run. He connects with Arturo Modelo, who hangs on for a quick gain of 10. Puma and Modelo are both chasing each other through the Offensive Player of the Year in the NFC. As Puma goes back to Modelo, he is weaving through defenders, brings it to the 41. A quick start for the dynamic duo, as St. Louis already has it past the 50 just minutes into this game. 2nd and 2, play action for Swift, who of course just signed last week, as that one is caught by Modelo, dragging the feet inbounds, and it will be a first down. The Niners are going to challenge it, and I don't think this is actually a horrible challenge by them because this is a really close one. But as you can see, it kind of looks like he drags him in. Unbelievable footwork by Arturo Modelo, continuing to show that he is the best receiver in the NFL. This play will stand. The Niners will lose their timeout. Now the Dragons have it on the goal line. 2nd and goal. Puma in the zone. Connects with Modelo, who takes a hit from his former Dragon teammate Malik Hooker, but not before scoring the touchdown. That is his 4th catch of the game and his 130th of the year, becoming just the 6th player in NFL history to reach that milestone in one season. He's also the 15th player with at least 17 receiving touchdowns in one season, and he's the first player ever to have done both in the same year. What a season for Arturo Modelo as the Niners have it for the first time today. Deebo Samuel with it to the 45. He wins the rep there over Jeff Okudah. Good start here for Colin Keaton-Givian, who he himself is on the last year of his contract, looking to prove to the Niners that he could be their long-term quarterback as the tight end. Natano Tui is there to the 34. He, of course, is the replacement for George Kittle, who was sent away at the deadline. 3rd and 2. Here is Colin Keaton-Givian on the run, in for a score, outrunning Devontae Wyatt and friends, and the 49ers tie it at 7. Dragons with it now in the 2nd quarter. Puma's in the zone as that one is dropped by Swift. First incompletion of the day for Puma, who started 9 of 9. 3rd and 3, play action. Puma looking short. Nice catch by Jamison Williams, keeping the feet in bounds as Nick Bosa is hurt, grabbing at his knee. This game is personal for Nick Bosa, being that he doesn't really like Puma Whitlock. He thinks he's a little bit too quarterbacky. But now Nick Bosa's day is done as Jamison Williams brings it to the 27-yard line, flexing on the defenders. Good to have J-Mo back after missing some time with a broken collarbone. Modelo, what a move on the defensive back, somehow getting the first down to the 16. Modelo is just so unbelievably gifted after the catch. That is already his 7th reception of the game. 3rd and 5 from the 11, up the middle. It's Isaiah Likely galloping his way into the end zone for a touchdown. And the St. Louis Dragons are back ahead. A hot start for Puma Whitlock, who has more passing touchdowns than he does incompletions today. So it's 14-7 now. Niners back with it. It's a handoff for Tajay Spears, who literally gets speared up and over by Cam Lucifer, who's played a pretty good game so far in the slot. Makes a nice play there in the ground game, and so far in coverage, he's been quite good. 3rd and 11, Keaton-Givian has an open man downfield, but he overthrows him. Deebo Samuel easily wins the rep against Okudah, but a little too much mustard on that pass. A possible touchdown, or at least a huge gain, taken off the board. 2nd and 4, whoop! It's an RPO with Modelo still on his feet, and it'll be ruled as a run for Arturo Modelo, who gains 20, continuing to show off his unbelievable ability with the ball in his hands. 3rd and 5, Puma and Modelo both still in the zone. Modelo again breaking tackles to the 13-yard line. That is his 9th reception of the first half. The Dragons cannot keep the ball out of his hands because he's so good. These two guys are still in the zone. Puma under pressure. That's a fumble! And it's quickly scooped up by Royal Osuchua. That was a close one. The former Florida Gator, C.J. Cotter, in with the sack, as that'll bring us to the 2-minute warning. 3rd and 18, Puma looking for the end zone. It is caught, but out of bounds. What a play there by Jamison Williams. I honestly think he got the feet in bounds as Griffin Dexter goes to the locker room for the Niners. The booth is going to rightfully review this one. We've got to take another look. Scotty Pickens would have thrown the challenge flag if not for the 2-minute warning being passed. As we look at the replay, I kind of think he was in. Sure enough, this play would be reversed. It's a touchdown for the Dragons. Puma Whitlock's 40th of the year. But, for whatever reason, the game is not going to count that as a touchdown for Puma or JMO in the stat sheet, even though it is. I don't know why. So he is still at 39. Anyway, it's 21-7. The touchdown still counts on the scoreboard, which is what matters most, as we've got a sack for Malachi Weston, forcing a loss of 6. Weston with his 8th sack of the year. Second and long now from the 29. Devontae Wyatt sending pressure. Here's Creed into the backfield, and he brings him down. The first-round rookie out of Michigan, Zion Creed, with his first NFL sack. I didn't know if it was ever going to come for him. He's had a few plays where he's been really close to getting that first sack, but it hasn't happened until now. Third and 21. They're just going to run the ball with Dexter Sanders, and he gets around 7. The Dragons have to burn a couple of timeouts on that drive to make sure they'll get time with the ball. And so they've got a timeout and a little bit under a minute left. Puma and Modelo still in the zone. It's another first down reception for Modelo. His 10th catch of the game. We're still in the first half, by the way. He now sits at 136 on the year. Maybe he will break the record if they keep force-feeding him. Who knows? Puma gets it to Swift, who is leveled. They've got to move quickly back to the line of scrimmage. That play wasted quite a bit of time. Second and 10 now. Puma with time. Looks downfield. He's got Amarion Cephas wide open to the 40, and they're going to use that last timeout. So if 20 seconds, you've got to be careful here. You can go for the field goal now. It'd be a long kick, or look for a deep shot. Sure enough, Jamison Williams wide open. He's out of bounds at the 6. Nobody covered JMO deep. That seems like an awfully bold strategy. And with 9 seconds, the Dragons are going to get to run another play. Still with no timeouts, keep in mind. Puma steps up in the pocket. He is sacked by Carmelo Finnegan. And that'll wrap up the first half, 21-7. The Dragons with a poor end of the first half. But other than that play, Puma Whitlock is slinging the ball around the field. He's 23 for 25. He's really only missed one throw today and is honestly playing the best half of football I've ever seen. Does kind of suck that he messed it up there at the end. Could have been a 3-score game. Could have had all the backups in the game and the starters sitting for the second half. But now that won't be the case quite yet. Here's our halftime report. We'll start in the Meadowlands. The Jets need a win and some help to get in. They currently lead 14-10 against the defending champion Dolphins. This is the game that matters for us. The Green Bay Packers, they currently lead the Bears 21-7. The Packers are the one team who can pass us for second place. That's Sam Laporta with the touchdown. I hope to never see him in a Packer jersey again. That makes me want to puke. And finally, in New Orleans, this game doesn't affect our seeding, but it could affect our first-round matchup. The winner of this game is in. The loser of this game maybe is in, maybe is out, maybe plays against us, as Justin Jefferson is widowy doing the gwitty. Saints on top of Atlanta. The winner of that game not only clinches a playoff spot, but also likely gets the 5 seed, or at worst, the 6 spot. So as we go into the second half, obviously we've thrown the ball at a super high level. We're probably going to run the ball a lot more, being that we're up and we're going to be chewing some clock. And then on the other side, San Francisco's probably going to be throwing it quite a bit. It's only a 14-point game. The Niners had the ball, so I don't want to view this as a game over quite yet. But when they're throwing the ball 6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 3, it's hard to take them seriously. Dexter Sanders loses a yard. He's wrapped up by Jabril Fofana and Penultimo Barahona. Now, the Dragons are going to start at the 2. They've got to get out of safety territory. They really haven't established the run game with how good Puma Whitlock has been. But they're going to need the run game to get going here as Joe Mixon gets around 9. So already, St. Louis is out of safety territory. Now from the 13 with Puma and Modelo still in the zone, by the way. Here's DeAndre Swift up the middle, gets the first down, and now they're definitely out of safety zone. I think Swift has been quite good since being signed last week. Even at 29 years old, he doesn't look like he's lost a step. Screen for Swift on 3rd down. He'll get around 4. And so for the first time today, the Dragons are going to have to punt the ball. Eagles franchise legend Akeem Davis-Gaither, if you know, you know, brings him down. And the offense appears to be slowing down a little bit, so much so that the starters are going to have to stay in the game longer than expected. Here's Sanders with a big run to the 36. Productive day on the ground for Sanders, 13 carries at 73 yards. Another example of how Simeon Bonnett's presence in the run game is so important for this defense, as we kind of talked about in the last episode. 3rd and 7. Wide open is Natano Tui, who breaks the tackle from Nada and is pushed out of bounds by Jalen Bourgeois. San Francisco's starting to get something going on this drive. Again, a touchdown brings them within one score. They're not out of this game. Handoff for Sanders, and he is going to lose yardage. Penultimo Barahona brings him down. He's had a pretty nice day. Of course, vying for more playing time next year. 3rd and long. Colin Keaton-Githian under pressure, and he will run out of the sack, but only gets a yard. Great tackle by Finnegan Howell Coleman. And so it's 4th and 15 at the 45, and they're going to kick. Okay, seems like an odd choice. 62-yarder for Moody is up, and good! He drills it! I really shouldn't be surprised now, thinking in hindsight, for them to go for the field goal, because Jake Moody's made some really long kicks against us in the past. But it is still a 2-score game, not a bad drive per se defensively, as the starters return on offense. I think another touchdown, and then we see the backups come in. So this could be it for the starters, as Puma Whitlock is going to look downfield. He's got Jamison Williams, who gets it to the 48. Jambo might be playing his best game of the year. He has been fantastic, nearing the 100 yards mark. Believe it or not, Jamison Williams has not gotten 100 yards in a game yet the entirety of this season. He's been close, including today, but hasn't gotten there. 3rd and 4. Under pressure, Puma with a shot for Modelo, who gets it to the 11. After 10 receptions in the first half, Modelo did not catch anything in the third, but he's on the board with an early reception here in the fourth. His 137th of the year for those counting at home. Officially 4th all-time. 2nd and 3. Likely is in for a score. His 2nd of the game, his 8th of the year. And I think that'll be it for some of the starters. And indeed, veterans like Owen Popo, Jeff Okuda, and Samasoni Saluni have been taken out of the game. Some of the other rotational guys are still playing defensively, but the most important veterans are not on the field. I did say, though, Cam Lucifer's playing the entire game. Finally allows a reception there to Wan'Dale Robinson. But other than that play, I think he's been quite good so far in the slot. Under pressure, it's Trajan Bleichenden in the backfield with a sack. Nice play there by Bleichenden, who I believe is now at a career-high 7 sacks on the year. 3rd and 18 for San Francisco, down by 18. Colin Keaton-Githian under pressure from Bleichenden again. Throws out of the sack. Nice catch. But it only goes for a gain of 2. The Niners are going to go for it. They figure, why the hell not? We're 4-12. We have nothing to lose, down by 18 in the final minutes of this disastrous season. As Keaton-Githian on the run, he is picked off. Ronrakis Barber with the interception, his 3rd of the year, stealing it away from Jalen Bourgeois. Would have been the first interception in Bourgeois' career, but instead it's Barber who goes for the play. Nonetheless, the Dragons get this stop. The offense will return, but with a lot of the backups. Guys like Puma Whitlock, Arturo Modelo, Isaiah Likely, Jamison Williams, and Darwin Juskins. Their days, for the most part, are all done. Likely's still in the game here because it's a 2 tight end set, but other than that, we won't see much of them. As Matamolo connects with Amarian Cephas, who gets it to the 4. Good to see Chance Matamolo getting some more reps. Of course, he as well as a free agent at the end of the year. I think he's going to look for a starting job possibly. 3rd and goal. Davis does not get it. He's wrapped up by the first-round rookie out of Michigan State, Elliott Sy. 4th and goal. The offense is going to stay on the field because, of course, they are looking to go for it. Chance Matamolo, the 4th-year man out of Washington State. He will look for the rookie, Voafana, but it's broken up. I think Matamolo's idea was that if he throws the ball quick enough, the defense isn't going to react fast and Voafana can catch it. Niners with it, but not for long. Penultimo Barahona sacks him in the end zone. 2 hands for safety, and likely the final points in the regular season will come from the defensive side of the ball. Another first down ends this game for good. 3rd and 5. Matamolo downfield for Aaron Mayer, and that'll do it. The Dragons win this one 30-10, finishing season 6 with a record of 12-5 and the 2nd seed in the NFC, meaning that, knock on wood, we win our playoff games. We will get at least 2 home playoff games, maybe 3, again, knock on wood, if we get to the NFC Championship and Carolina does not. I'm certainly pleased with how our team played today. Really solid on both sides of the ball. Just a good win to get us ready for the playoffs. Puma Whitlock was phenomenal per usual, 336 yards. Should have had 4 touchdowns, but the game screwed him out of 1, while completing 83% of his passes, a career high. Colin Keaton-Gillian was pretty bad. Dexter Sanders had a solid day on the ground, but certainly slowed down as the game went along. Receiving-wise, Arturo Modelo is him. 11 catches for 136 and a touchdown. He only had one catch in the second half, though. Jamo played really well. Isaiah Likely scored twice. Cephas played well. The offensive line was pretty good. And then defensively, I was impressed. After that first drive, the Niners scored 3 points the rest of the way. We had 4 sacks from 4 different players, which was good to see. I thought our coverage was good. The run defense was pretty solid. Overall, one of the better defensive performances of the year. And the best news of all, nobody got hurt. We didn't even really have anybody get banged up in this game. And of course, next week, Colin Robinson, Sharif Sully, and Jalen Maller will all be back. Only Simeon Bonnet and Milan Santa will be hurt for the wild card round. So our team, for the most part, is really healthy. We're only going to be missing 2 starters. Here's a look at the scores around the rest of the league. The Packers did beat the Bears, so it's a good thing we won today. Players of the week, Deontay Harris steals it away from Puma Whitlock. If they had counted that last touchdown, Puma would have gotten it. Lamar Jackson looking to hold on to his MVP crown. Scored 5 times in a Ravens win, while Dean McKennedy with 5 sacks chases Simeon Bonnet for the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFC. And then Jaden Nelson of the Chargers wins the other Player of the Week. So last order of business today is go through our studs and duds of the year. I'm going to do a more in-depth season recap in the next episode. But right now, I just want to go through some stats to try to figure out who our studs and duds will be. Keep in mind, this is an expectations-based award, not necessarily our 3 best and 3 worst players, but more so highlighting 3 players who went above and beyond this year and 3 players who really disappointed. I will say right away, Puma Whitlock, Simeon Bonnet, and Arturo Modelo are all not on the list. I thought all 3 guys were the best players at their positions in the NFL this year. But I wanted to highlight 3 guys who may have gone a little bit more under the radar this year, but that's obviously not to take away from the seasons these guys had. Puma Whitlock with 5,000 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. Simeon Bonnet would have broken the tackles for loss record and maybe the sacks record had he stayed healthy, while Arturo Modelo finishes the year with the receiving triple crown, 4th all-time in terms of receptions in a single season. So, looking at our first stud of the year, there were a few players on both sides of the ball who I thought about, but in terms of the most important players on this team, I feel like it's really a big 4. It's not just Puma, Modelo, and Bonnet. I think there's one other guy who I think is as important as those 3, but doesn't get as much love because he's on the offensive line, and that is Sharif Sully, who was signed to a really big contract this offseason, 4 years, over $80 million. So expectations were pretty high for him, but even I did not expect him to be this good. He only allowed 1 sack. He was a rock in pass protection. He was really good in the run game, and he looks like one of the best left tackles in the NFL. And the fact that the Cowboys let him go and we were able to sign him is honestly pretty wild to me. He's only going to be 26 years old next season. He's still super young, and he's one of the best left tackles in the game. And he deserves more love, so we're going to give it to him by putting him on the ballot. Our second stud of the year candidate is Malachi Weston, who ended up being our second most productive pass rusher with 8 sacks. Weston had a really interesting season because he was really good at the beginning of the year and really good at the end of the year, but towards the middle of the season, he was kind of quiet. Between weeks 6 and 16, he had half a sack. All of his sacks were early or late, but he still was really solid towards the start of the year. He had a great camp and really burst onto the scene. And then at the end of the year, I thought he played quite well, too. I was a little bit worried about how he would perform without Simeon Bonnet, but he looked awfully good today against the Niners. Weston is a really interesting story, being a former second-rounder by the Saints a few years ago. It just never really worked out there. We took a shot on him in free agency, and obviously it paid off. He's not as good of a player as, say, Sharif Sully, but keep in mind, the expectations were very different. We're paying Sully $80 million, while Weston is getting paid $5. Anyway, Milan Santa is going to be our last candidate. There were a few players I thought about here, but I really feel like Milan Santa took a leap up. With over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, he was really efficient as a runner. We saw a lot more big runs than last year. The one question, though, with him is injury. He's only missed 3 regular season games in his career, but he hasn't made it to the end of the season yet in either of his first 2 years. Nonetheless, though, I don't think that should take away from the year he had because he was so dynamic for our offense and, again, really took a leap from the player he was last year. Him and Juskins were such a good combination together. Let's now go through our duds of the year, and we will start with Cam Lucifer. Yes, he led the NFL in interceptions. Yes, he won the NFL's award for the best defensive back. The game thinks he was really good. But for those of you who saw the games, you know that he wasn't. Sure, we got big turnovers from him. He won us the game against the Falcons with the interception in overtime. But in coverage, he was not good. At the beginning of the year, he was getting torched. I thought we got a turning point from him towards the middle of the year against like the Chiefs, the Bills, the Lions. He looked a lot better. But then once Simeon Bonnet got hurt, he again fell off a cliff. He played pretty well today against the Niners, but that's not going to keep him off of the dud of the year ballot. DJ Orleans is second. I signed him expecting him to be our second pass rusher. He ended up finishing 7th on the team in sacks. That's not going to cut it. His snap count from last year to this year really didn't go down by that much, so it's not a matter of playing time, it's just his production fell off, and he really was not worth the $13 million price tag. From there, I thought about a few guys for the last spot. Jalen Bourgeois, Bubba Watkins, Bugsy Briggs, even Jamison Williams, although I felt a little bit bad about it with him because he missed some time this year. He didn't really have a consistent role. I even thought about Presley Harvin, but I think I'm going to lean towards Bugsy Briggs. None of the 5 players I just said were bad or anything. I don't feel right choosing Briggs because the expectations on him weren't super high. He wasn't guaranteed a starting job coming into the year. He ended up winning one, and I want to give him some credit for that. But he was our worst offensive lineman, allowing 9 sacks, a career high. So again, make sure to vote for the studs and duds of the year. The link, of course, is in the description. And with that, it's time to find out who we're playing against in the first round of the playoffs. Payback is coming. No diddy.